Hi, today I'm here with brain health researcher Dr. Marc Milstein. He specializes in taking the leading research on human health, productivity, and happiness, and he presents it in a way that entertains, educates, and empowers his audience to live better. Now, who doesn't want that? Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so our conversation today is going to center around stress with teenagers. So right now, I mean, the world is so crazy. What is the biggest cause of stress for teenagers right now?
I think that one thing to think about is that every teenager is different. And so that there's this individuality, and that we want to be careful to group them all together. But I think some things that definitely stand out are the routine. The normal day-to-day interactions have been thrown out the window. And I think for teens and adults, that's really challenging, is that when we're used to having a sense of, this is what I do each day. Monday is a little bit different than Tuesday, and Tuesday is a little different than Wednesday, and the weekends are different than the weekdays. And when all of that goes out the window and things just sort of become as they are now, that can be very stress-inducing. Also, not seeing your friends, not being able to see your friends in a very casual setting is very challenging. Face-to-face interactions, and the uncertainty about the future, about what is going to be happening tomorrow or a week from now, or even a month from now, and thinking about after high school, or what's happening with work or college, where there are going to be opportunities there, what are they going to be like? It's understandable that there's a tremendous amount of anxiety among teenagers right now.
So I was thinking, as you were talking about what teenagers don't have right now, like summertime is typically a time where routine goes out the window, and some kids really thrive in that environment. But this is kind of an on steroids experience. Like the back to school issue is being spoken about so much right now, because not just teenagers, but parents so desperately want to know what it's going to look like. So seeing as it doesn't appear that there's going to be like definitive answers, because it's a changing situation hourly, how do we learn to sit with that uncertainty without having our anxiety reaction to that?
I think that's a good point, in just being aware that we don't know, that this is a time where it's very difficult to predict what's going to be happening a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, and coming to a point where we have to say, let's focus on the things that we can really control today, and be aware that the future is going to be something that's going to be, for the next foreseeable amount of time, something that's very much evolving, and we have to be flexible and adapt to it. And if we go into it, I think with that awareness, it can be helpful, as opposed to being very rigid and thinking that, okay, this is exactly what has to happen, and this is what is going to happen, instead of framing it that, okay, over the next few months, we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to be flexible. We're going to think we're going one direction, and we're going to quickly have to pivot. And we're going to have to be aware that that's just going to be part of our day to day. And then not spending too much time trying to plan every detail of the future out, because it might go out the window, and thinking about what we can do more in the short term.
I think that holds so true for a lot of us, but for some people who don't have the luxury of planning their own schedules, like how do they deal if you are two working parents and you have young kids at home that can't manage for themselves, or even, middle school age kids that need help with the online learning? How does that work?
It's definitely a challenge. I think part of it is saying that this is really tough right now, and that it's not perfect, and it's going to be difficult, and we're trying to balance and manage things that we are very hopeful is not going to last very, very long, that we can't sustain this, that there's going to have to come a point where we're hopeful about solutions to things, from treatments to things that will help us get out of this, but being aware that we can't sustain in this way, that people have to that parents that are working and kids that are struggling in online learning, and that having all of these issues are things that we can't be wearing every hat. A parent can't be doing everything at once, and a teenager can't be asked to be doing all this. So I think saying that, okay, and what I've talked to some parents about and found is that letting go of some things during this time, and saying, I can't do it all. I just can't right now. I know that some things are going to have to be just today's focus, and some things I'm going to have to put off till tomorrow, but I don't need to feel like every day is a perfect day where I get everything accomplished, and it's just like it's a perfect replication of what we used to be doing.
I think that's great. Take an assessment of how you spend your time, and then
Right.
You're going to have to we're all going to have to say, well, this one is off the table right now because I just can't do it all. That's
Yeah,
really helpful.
exactly.
Okay, so are there kids, I have a kid like this. I don't know if it's typical, but when one cause of anxiety disappears, gets resolved, another one kind of swoops right in. Is that commonplace, and what do you do with that?
Yeah, that's very normal. Not everyone experiences that, but that's very normal. It reminds me of a little, just very quick, funny story that I always think about. When I was talking to somebody about this, they told me just this very quick story that in earlier times, a couple years ago when they went on a vacation to get away from anxiety. And they went to like an all-inclusive Club Med type resort. And they said for like one day or a half a day, they had no worries and no anxiety. And then within a day, they were getting really anxious about they were going to miss volleyball and that they were going to miss the nighttime show and that they got their good seat at dinner. And I think that's part of what is to be a human being for many people. It's just the way we are built. It's this idea that anxiety is meant to be something that alerts us that we have to oftentimes either take action, or it's our brain telling us this is something we have to be aware of. And so if we reframe it that way and say, wait a second, my brain is considering this is something that's important, doesn't mean I have to dwell on it all day, but I have to at least say, okay, this is something I have to take action on, or I need to put it in perspective and be aware that our brain does, the second we get that thing off of our checklist of what the current anxiety is, the next one sort of slides in, because we're very much built that way to worry about things for our survival. Think about our ancestors. The ones who worried survived. The ones that took it easy and relaxed probably didn't pass on their genes. So it's deeply embedded in our brain to replace the next worry with the next worry.
I love that story. Nothing highlights it better than a Club Med vacation.
Right.
Okay, so one of the things I like about talking to you is that you have very practical tips and they're easy to do. How do we lower our anxiety also, but how do we help our teenagers lower their anxiety? So you mentioned something about pets, and during COVID, everybody's bought a dog. It's
Yeah.
the best. So how do pets help us? What's the recommendation there?
Well, pets give us a positive distraction. They put us in the present moment. Oftentimes we have to either attend to their needs or just enjoy being outside with them or be in that moment of playing with them. And so a lot of our anxiety and our worry is either thinking about the past or the future. But all these studies show that if we can get ourselves in the present moment, the right here and right now, really into something that we're doing, that we're enjoying, anxiety and stress levels drop. And so a pet is just one example of something that when we're feeling anxious to say, what can I do in this moment? Can I go play the guitar? Can I go out for a walk? Can I go play, shoot some baskets, do something that is a tangible, actionable, present moment thing that you can do. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just like, oh, I'm feeling that feeling. Okay, I need to go take action and do something that puts me in the present moment that I enjoy.
So sitting with a pet really does that.
Yeah.
Going outside and doing something also serves the same purpose.
Yeah. So interestingly, in the lockdowns, which are protecting us, there's elements that we have to be aware of. There's studies that came out that looked at people's sleep, for example, and they found that the number of hours of sleep is going up during this, but the quality is going down, and people don't feel as rested or re-energized. And part of that is that in the morning we're not getting outside, and so we're hours might pass before we see some natural light. And all these studies really suggest that if we want to sleep better, if we want to help our mood, 5-10 minutes soon after waking up, getting outside, there's this clock in our brain that is signaled, and it helps us with not only sleep, but our metabolism and our mood. So just being aware that we want to stay safe, but we want to also get that morning light, and a backyard, a balcony, quick walk around the block, something like that is really helpful.
So the inclination to grab your phone and hang out in bed, checking a little bit, is you should fight that and get out of bed and go get some sunlight.
Yeah, it's so tempting to look at your phone first thing in the morning. And just a little quick tip about that is that part of how we wake up is we get a cortisol surge, which is the stress hormone. It actually helps us get ready and excited about the day. It's actually the good side of stress. But if we're looking at our phone, that's also stressful. And that can be like overwhelming in the first 20 minutes of waking up. And then we can feel like kind of tired and draggy. It can even catch up a few hours later. So instead, the idea is first thing when you wake up, get outside, do a little breathing or mindfulness, do something that's a little more active. And that can help you kind of bring that cortisol surge down and then be better prepared for the stresses of the day.
So easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it is so easy. Whether we do it
Yeah.
And then you have something about when you're going to sleep, one way to reduce the anxiety of falling asleep and waking up.
Yes, yeah. So it's this really simple idea that's been shown in all these studies to be effective, and it's in the hour before bed, just pretty much writing down on an old-fashioned pen and paper anything you're worried about, anything you're stressed about, your to-do list, because it's those things that often we think about either in the hour before bed or right, we're trying to go to sleep, but our brain is like, don't forget that, and don't forget that, and that one last thing you had to do. And it's interesting that if you get it on paper, it's very similar to cell phone numbers. How many did you have memorized 10 years ago? Probably a lot. How many do you have memorized now? Probably very few. Once information is put safely in somewhere like your phone, your brain throws it away. And so what scientists figured is, well, let's try this. Let's have people write things down. And they actually said, look at the paper and tell yourself the information is stored somewhere safe. You can deal with it in the morning. And if you wake up at 2 in the morning and you have that thought that's spinning in your head, write it down, tell yourself this information is safe. You'll deal with it in the morning. People not only fell asleep faster, they actually scanned their brain and they got deeper stages of deep sleep and REM sleep. So this little trick is basically offloading and saying, brain, deal with this tomorrow, not now. It's safe. You don't have to worry. Don't keep reminding me. It'll be there tomorrow.
So now here's the question. How do we get our teenagers to buy into this? Like, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking this is help for me, but really our goal is to help parents help teenagers. So they're not as excited when I give them suggestions as the parent, as the mom especially. How do we convince teenagers?
I think there's a couple different ways to do it. One is just giving it a try for a couple days. Just give it a try, see if it makes a difference. And sometimes when we see how much these little things help, can be helpful. The other thing is I always like to do is point out the heroes of teenagers and say, like, for example, LeBron James really prioritizes his sleep. Like he says it's his secret to success. Or if a kid is really into, business, that this CEO is that they say their secret weapon is sleep. And this is what they actually do. They have this really cool tip I just read about. So sometimes I frame it that they're saying it and it's something that they've done and that, the science really backs this up. And so those are two little things, is just give it a try and framing it that somebody that they might admire does these things and is their secret weapon.
So what's the biggest parenting myth around anxiety?
I think a parenting myth is that any aspect of it that it's not, we have to be aware that how normal it is and that it's something that is part of being a teenager and it's part of being a human being. And one of the hardest things is that with anxiety is constantly trying to suppress it. And instead saying, this is part of being alive. Anxiety for most people is something that's just part of our human experience, and saying, I'm going to, instead of suppress it, which can be exhausting, I'm going to say, this is energy. This is something telling my brain to take action. And I'm going to go do one thing, not two things, not three things, not 10 things. I'm going to go do one thing. And then I'm going to take a complete break, a real break, like play with the dog or go outside for that walk. And then I'm going to go tackle my next thing that I have to tackle. And one other thing is that it's important to think about that anxiety can be managed with really simple things. Anxiety is very complex, and it's also something that's extremely serious. But these simple things I'm not saying are the cure, but they can be very helpful. And so being aware that trying them and finding the right ones that work for the individual can be helpful. One other last tip I'll leave you with. This is one that I always say sounds so silly, but really works for many people, is schedule time for anxiety. Is that say to yourself, at 4 o'clock today, I'm going to worry. I'm going to have a full-blown anxious moment. For 10 minutes, I'm going to worry about the news. I'm going to worry about all these things, but I'm going to set a timer. And in 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to then say, that's it. That's enough for today. I'll have my next anxiety meeting with myself tomorrow. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, remind yourself, you know what, I don't need to worry about this now because I have it on the calendar that tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I'm going to have my anxious time. And it's important to have these boundaries and these times to be anxious, because we're not worried about anxiety. We're worried about anxiety that never ends, that runs all day long. That's the anxiety that wears us out and drains us and has major risk factors. So if we can just put a time on it, that can be helpful. So I would say that accepting it, trying not to push it away, and little things that can make a big difference, being open-minded to embracing them.
Dr. Marc Milstein, thank you so much for these wonderful suggestions.